Hello, everyone. My name is Carol Burnett. I'm the director of the Mississippi Low Income Child Care Initiative. We're a nonprofit organization that does advocacy to make our state's child care assistance program work better for the parents who need affordable child care, and also for the providers who serve those parents who need affordable child care. We're really delighted that you joined us today. I'm joined here on this webinar by a couple of my colleagues, Matt Williams and Roberta Avila. I want to start off by just welcoming our presenters. We have Debbie Weinstein, who is the executive director of the Coalition on Human Needs. It's an alliance of national organizations working to promote policies which address the needs of low-income families. Debbie is a longtime friend of mine and also of childcare and a colleague of ours in this work. And she's a champion advocate for low-income families. Thank you for being with us, Debbie. And I understand that you are going to help us with Q&A as we move forward with the presentation. Leading the Coalition for Human Needs outreach work about the child tax credit is Eleni DeFonseca, who is going to share tools and resources to help us all get the word out about the child tax credit. Also joining us is Nikki McSellis, the Chief Impact and Strategy Officer of the United Way of the Capital Area. Nikki is going to share information with us about VITA sites across the state of Mississippi, where parents can find free help to access the child tax credit. And before we get started, I just want to ask if those of you who have questions for our panelists, please type them into the chat or into the Q&A. And we're going to get to those questions after the presentations. And we'll go ahead and get started. Eleni, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Carol. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. As Carol mentioned, my name's Eleni. I'm one of the CTC Outreach coordinators with the Coalition on Human Needs and Partnership for America's Children. And we are working on a national outreach campaign to get the word out on the child tax credit. So this presentation is really to help everyone understand what's going on, next steps, and how to help clients or your organization and community. It is not designed to make you a tax expert. We don't have any expectation of anyone helping anyone to actually complete their full taxes unless you are a tax expert joining us today. But it's really so that we can give you some clear and concise information on what's going on and to help get the word out. So as Carol mentioned, the Coalition on Human Needs is an alliance of national groups, service providers, faith groups, policy experts, and labor, civil rights, and other advocates. And the mission is to advocate at the federal level to meet the needs of people with low incomes and increase the knowledge of positive outcomes for current or proposed programs. The Partnership for America's Children has over 50 members of multi-issue child advocacy organizations across 40 states, and their mission is to support its network of state and community child advocacy organizations in effective advocacy. So what is the expanded CTC? The expanded CTC came with the American Rescue Plan Act that expanded it for tax year 2021. The expanded CTC is projected to cut the number of children in poverty by about 40% and also projected to lift approximately 1.1 million children above half the poverty line. And you can help families claim the full credit just by knowing more about what is going on and how it can be accessed. So families were eligible to receive the first half of the CTC in 2021 and half when they filed their taxes this year, or the full credit if they didn't get the advanced tax payments in 2021. And the credit is $3,600 per child from ages 0 to 5 and $3,000 per child age 6 through 17. And this was previously $2,000. So it's a pretty significant increase. And there is no minimum income requirement. Families with no earned income are eligible for the full credit, and the credit is fully refundable, meaning families are eligible for the full amount even if they don't owe taxes. And this is just an example of how much money is at stake. If we take a family with 3 children, a 4-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 15-year-old, in total for the 2021 CTC, they would receive $9,600. And additionally, the family may qualify for other additional money through stimulus payments or other tax credits that have also been expanded. And the challenge is that there are 4 million or more children at risk of missing out on the CTC payments. And this is because their families have no or very low incomes, or they're not required to file taxes and may not have filed taxes ever or even recently. These families may not have received the 2021 advanced CTC payments, and they will miss out on the credit altogether if they don't file taxes this year, or, and we'll get into this a little bit later, or don't access the non-filer portal that will be available hopefully by some point in late May. Black and Latino kids were disproportionately excluded from the full CTC before it was expanded, and are now more likely to miss out on it, even if eligible. And really trusted community organizations are the ones that can truly help these families claim the CTC through the relationships and connections that they already have on the ground. And again, you do not have to be a tax expert to help families. So who is eligible for the 2021 CTC and how do families claim it? So starting off, an adult can file for the CTC if they have a social security number or an individual taxpayer identification number or an ITIN, but children do have to have a social security number, and the social security number must be valid for employment. The dependent must be the adult's child, including adopted, a grandchild or stepchild, younger sibling, step sibling, half sibling, or their descendant, or a foster child placed by a government agency. And the dependent must have lived with the adult in the US for more than half the year. So that's 6 months and a day. The dependent also could not have provided over half of their own support in 2021. And how do families claim the 2021 CTC? So in 2021, most families automatically received the advanced CTC payments. This was about $250 to $300 per child per month from July through December. Families who were not required to file taxes or did not do so in 2019 or 2020 for other reasons had to take steps to receive the advance payments. And these steps, the step primarily included going through the non-filer portal that was open through November 15th. And everyone will need to file a tax return this year to receive the second half or full amount of the 2021 CTC. Again, this the caveat to that is that after the tax filing date of April 18th, families who don't have to file or haven't filed can still get the credit by going on the non-filer portal, which will be opening later on in the spring. Or they can file taxes after the April 18th date because they're not required to file, so there's no penalty and they don't have to request an extension, so they can file beyond that deadline. And families need help understanding why they should file and how to get help filing, and that's why we're here today. This is a timeline of the tax filing season and beyond in relation to the child tax credit. So as we know, the season started on April 24th and it will end on April 18th. It will close on April 18th. So people obligated to file taxes must either have filed or requested an extension by April 18th. And then again, individuals not required to file taxes can continue to file returns through the 2022 throughout 2022, even if they do not request an extension. And we're also right now in the time period where the VITA sites are open for free tax assistance. And we'll talk a little bit more about that further on. And as I said, the portal hopefully will be open by some point in May. The simplified online filing portal is where individuals who aren't required to file can claim the CTC and potentially the third economic stimulus payment. And we expect this portal to be open through until some point in the fall. So filing 2021 tax returns, where are we suggesting that people go? So our main push right now is to get people to local VITA sites where it's possible and accessible. One of the places that you can go to identify a local VITA site is getyourrefund.org. We also suggest that once you identify a VITA site, to call the VITA site before showing up. Different VITA sites may have capacity or appointment requirements, things like that. So we want to make sure that families and individuals are prepared and ready to go so that there's no hiccups along the way. You can also call 211, and so you can see there's an option for choosing your language for information on a VITA site near you. And additionally, for married people, both must go. And we also we'll share in the chat some links to a few different documents that have a list of different sites in Mississippi, so that you can easily have access to that as well when looking up a site in your area. And through getyourrefund.org, both in English and Spanish, individuals can do three things. They can access free, they can also do an additional three things. They can access free do-it-yourself tax filing services if they're comfortable filing on their own. They can get free virtual tax filing assistance, including the opportunity to discuss their situation with a tax specialist over the phone, or they can be notified when Get CTC, the online simplified filing portal, opens in May. And for free tax assistance, different locations may have other available tax assistance as well. We're also going to share resources. These links will also be shared in the follow-up email, and I will pop them in the chat once we're done. So ARP Foundation tax aid sites also provide free in-person and virtual tax assistance with a focus on individuals who are over 50 or have low to moderate income. We also have resources for the low-income taxpayer clinics, and these clinics help individuals with low incomes who have tax disputes with the IRS. So as we've been doing these presentations, we have received a lot of different questions around custody issues, things such as, you know, a child is with a grandparent, but the parent is actually collecting the CTC, and this is the best resource to get answers and questions on how to navigate that. And if a person wants to pursue getting the CTC for themselves, if they haven't in the past and someone else has been receiving it, or other issues that might come up in individual cases. And free tax assistance, virtual and in-person, is available for many families with low incomes. But we also know that may not be able to meet everyone's needs, or there might just not be something close enough for somebody. So if families decide to use paid tax services, we caution them to be careful that preparers are submitting the accurate returns on their behalf. We have this link here on guidance for individuals using paid tax preparers. This is also in our toolkit, and it just gives a good how-to and questions that someone can ask if they do need to go to a paid tax preparer so that they can get the best service possible. And so speaking as well about the ITINs, or the individual taxpayer identification numbers, this mainly impacts a lot of immigrant families or mixed status families. So some important things to know, as I mentioned before, is that for families to claim the CTC, dependents must have the Social Security numbers. But the parents or the caregivers can have a Social Security number or an ITIN, and the ITIN does have to be active. To obtain the ITIN, individuals need to submit a Form W-7, proof of identity, and foreign status documents with tax returns. That Form W-7 is also in our toolkit. And it's typically a two-step process. So you prepare the ITIN application, then file application with your tax return. The ITIN application can't be submitted separately. It has to be submitted with the actual tax return. And one of the things we are recommending for individuals who need to get an ITIN and have their personal documents approved, to go to and seek out an IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center to get their copies certified. So these are centers, again, there's a link here on where to find one, but these are centers, they don't file tax returns. They actually don't do a lot of in-person assistance, but they will verify the documents, which essentially means that a family doesn't have to then send all their really personal important documents out with their tax returns and be without those documents for an extended period of time. They can just get it certified and then bring it to their tax appointment to attach with their tax return. I will also add that we have heard from the taxpayer, these sites, that it's important that individuals have the form W-7 completed before they go in, because the sites won't fill it out with them or for them. They really are just there to help certify the documents. And this is a link that's also in our toolkit. It's a great resource with the required documents to file taxes. It's a checklist that you can provide to families so that they can see exactly what they need and be able to bring in everything that they need. So essentially they only need to make one trip to do their tax returns, and they're ready to go when they arrive. And we also want to mention and talk about IRS letter 6419. This was a letter sent out to individuals who received the advanced CTC payments. So the IRS sent everyone a 6419 letter showing how much they got for the CTC. These letters show how much the IRS thinks they received in the child tax credit, and there's potential that they could be incorrect. So for example, one example of this might be that the IRS mailed a check to a family, but the family may have moved and didn't receive the check, and the IRS hasn't updated their records showing that it was returned. Additionally, they also sent 2 letters to both members of married couples with half the amount received. So each person in the couple got a letter saying how much they've received, but it was only half of the total amount. So these aren't duplicate letters. And if someone is going in to file their tax returns, they will have to bring both letter ins to submit with the returns. And we are also suggesting that if anyone is looking at this letter and thinking or feeling that the amount is incorrect and it doesn't match, that they should check their IRS online account for a more up-to-date amount and see and use that when they're filing their tax returns. Okay, and now we want to talk about some common barriers and concerns that have come up, and that also, we'll go over these now, but also these are included, a lot of these answers are included in our toolkits. So we conducted a series of focus groups in fall of 2021 with non-filers. And these are this is some of the feedback that we received on their knowledge, their experience, their thoughts around the CTC. So first, they responded well to language that emphasized the help CTC provided for the family as a whole. They did not necessarily respond well to findings about long-term benefits to children. They were cautious about overpromising. So these are some of the things that we talked about before about cutting child poverty in half, things like that. People were definitely more focused on the more day-to-day, and that this can help pay for childcare, and we know that it's expensive to raise kids, things like that. People were much more responsive to. Individuals didn't realize that the CTC was expanded and that people who weren't eligible in the past now are. People believed that they had to work to get the credit. There was a fear of having to pay the IRS back if they weren't entitled to the credit. There was fear around owing back taxes, as well as losing their benefits like SNAP, Medicaid, WIC, things like that. There were also immigration concerns, concerns around language barriers and access. There were questions around claiming a child born in 2021. This was essentially because a child born in 2021 couldn't be claimed on the portal while it was open through last fall, but they now can be claimed when filing a tax return. They also expressed difficulty getting through to the IRS if they had a question, and there was also a general desire for in-person help. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these right now, but our toolkits address these barriers, including a pretty comprehensive FAQ we've put together that you will also have access to. So the first question, does receiving the CTC impact other public benefits? The answer to that is that getting this credit will not change any federally funded public benefits that a family receives, such as Social Security, SNAP, childcare subsidies, or WIC. Will an individual ever have to pay this money back? So the CTC is not a loan. If someone receives payments for a child who is no longer their dependent, they may have to pay that money back. There are some protections for those with incomes below 40,000, and that's 50,000 for heads of households and 60,000 for married couples. And there are some more limited protections for those with incomes below 80,000, individuals or non-custodial parents, 100,000 for single head of household, or 120,000 for couples filing jointly. What if someone has not filed tax return in recent years? So people with very low incomes, under 18,800 for head of household, 25,100 for married couples filing jointly, are generally not required to file. Even if they were required to file, generally there's not a penalty if the IRS owes someone a refund, perhaps from the EITC. And taxpayers can actually file for the past 3 years to receive the refunds they are owed. So they can actually go back 3 years if they haven't filed in the past 3 years. And even if someone owes child support or taxes, they can benefit from claiming the CTC. The credit will basically go towards paying off the outstanding child support or taxes first, and they'll receive any amount left over. And if it all goes toward what is owed, that reduces their debt. It means that they'll be able to get tax credits in future years. Will receiving the CTC affect someone's immigration status or ability to get a green card? The answer to that is no. So under the current law, receiving the CTC or other tax credits will not affect their immigration status, their ability to get a green card, or their future immigration plans. Use of tax credits is not considered a public charge determination by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Will the IRS share someone's immigration status with other government agencies? The answer to that is no. The IRS is forbidden to share an individual's tax information with other agencies. There are limited exceptions to this, and those exceptions are related to certain criminal investigations or to determine someone's tax liability. If you're coming across someone who does have those sorts of concerns, there's lots of information on the IRS website, and also we suggest referring them to a tax or immigration law expert to help them with their individual cases. Okay. And as I mentioned, our resource toolkit, especially the FAQ, addresses these common concerns. That's the link to it. I'll also pop that in the chat when I'm done. And you'll be able to look at all the documents. This is a living, breathing document that we are updating as we get new information, and making it as clear and concise as possible so that you can find the answers that you need when questions come up. And now we want to talk a little bit about CTC Outreach and CTC Outreach in conjunction with some of the resources that we have and how you might be able to use them. So in terms of outreach itself, what works? What we found and what our partners and other people doing this work have found is that outreach that is integrated into existing programs and communications is effective, meaning outreach done by programs already on the ground, programs already having relationships with families and communities, and also families receiving multilingual information multiple times is also very effective. The outreach must include clear referral info with different options for how people can ask questions or get tax prep assistance. So this is why we're also including lots of info on VITA, and we're going to have a VITA presentation as well once I'm finished, because it can be really helpful once you identify a family that can claim the credit and hasn't done so yet, that you can just lead them or tell them where they can go next for next steps. So it's not an overwhelming process. And broad communication is most effective when paired with targeted outreach or follow-up. So communication with high volume of families while also connecting more deeply with those at risk of missing out on the CTC. So getting the word out, and then also using the relationships that organizations and anyone else working with families already have, that two-tiered approach can really help to get the message out. And school districts and government benefit agencies are among the most trusted sources of information for families. Text messages, for example, from schools or agencies are especially effective, although robocalls, emails, and mailers can also be effective. In addition to hearing from trusted community messengers, families may need to hear from tax, immigration, or family law experts for their individual questions, as I mentioned earlier. And there are two main levels of outreach that we've identified that can be effective. Level 1 outreach is centered around raising awareness. Level 2 outreach activities are centered around deeper engagement with families. So when talking about level 1 outreach, what does that actually look like? So one of the first things that can be done is sending mass text messages, robocalls, and or emails. Texts have proven to be especially effective, but it's helpful to communicate through a combination of methods. As I've mentioned, right here are two sample texts. One's a sample text and one's a sample voice message. These come from the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. This is in their toolkit, and their toolkit is also linked within ours, so you'll have access to this as well. And these are ready-made messages that an organization or an individual can use to share out on the CTC. You can also record a phone hold message if you already have one, or a video message for waiting room office screens. Again, this is another sample hold message from CBPP, also available through their toolkit. Hanging posters in waiting rooms and other public spaces, or distributing flyers, or distribute flyers and sending home flyers in backpacks. A lot of organizations, schools, agencies already do this. We have ready-made flyers as well. Here are two samples. One is from GMMB, the other again is from CBPP. They are available and linked to in our toolkit, and they're also available in multiple languages. And we also suggest that when it's possible, if you can add CTC related questions to existing intake forms, that can really help to screen families or individuals that are coming through if they're going to fill out a form anyways, and you can add a simple question that can be really helpful. Providing intake workers with local VITA number or flyers to provide to families who may be eligible also can be really helpful and effective. And adding flyers and FAQs to resources that are already going out to families. Again, pairing this outreach and this information with things that are already happening can be really effective. This is a screenshot, a partial screenshot of the FAQ that we've put together and is inside our toolkit. And where partners have relationships with state and local benefit agencies or school districts, we encourage them to send out mass communications to beneficiaries and families. My colleague, Julia, who's also working on this, is hosting a number of school outreach resource and info sessions. The link is there. I'll also share that if anyone is interested. We also, as well as the provider and partner toolkit, we also have a public agency toolkit that's also available and has a number of great resources in there as well. And additionally, also, you can send out a message in a regular newsletter if you already have a newsletter going on. Also post on social media. These are sample social media posts from our partners, and we have CTC social media ready to go posts as well within our toolkit that you can utilize. And for level 2 outreach activities, some of the things that are effective and we suggest include holding a phone bank or conducting peer-to-peer texting, hosting a Q&A with tax specialists, immigration attorney, or other subject matter experts. Again, families might have additional questions that are a little bit more specific around taxes or immigration. And if there's a capacity to do so, this can be a really helpful activity to better inform and assist families in the process. And as we know, these can be held in person via Zoom or Facebook Live, among other options, whatever works for your organization and your programs. Additional level 2 outreach activities can include helping families schedule VITA appointments. Again, that ability to do a referral, a direct referral, so that families already have that next step. Working in collaboration with local tax sites and partners to make tax prep services accessible. So helping to coordinate language interpretation, childcare during appointments, transportation to tax sites, things like that. And organize tax filing or document preparation events. When, if possible, working with VITA volunteers, local university or other tax specialist volunteers to host tax prep events or to help families prepare necessary documents before VITA appointments. And this is a list of some of the things that are in our toolkit. We went over a lot of that already: flyers and posters, messaging, FAQ, social media toolkit. We also have resources for immigrant families. We recently added a section on foster youth and resources specifically to foster youth. We have the materials to help pick a tax preparer and get ready for an appointment. Best practices and lessons for child tax credit outreach. We have a report on lessons learned about benefit agency and school outreach. Findings from our focus group of non-filers and service providers, if anyone's interested in learning more about that, and resources for tracking outcomes. And we also have a child tax credit email list. If you're interested, you can sign up for that. Our email list is we use to share announcements on trainings, additional trainings, any sort of updates to child CTC, updates to our toolkit. And in the coming weeks, as we find out more about when the non-filer portal will be open, we'll also be sharing resources and information on that as well. If you're interested, you can also get a unique URL for Get Your Refund, and this would give you access to track your outreach activities. So how people are using Get Your Refund through your specific URL, and you can see what's most effective, what people are using more, what's most helpful. If you're interested in that, you can email me directly and I can help you sign up for the link. And I know we're going to do Q&A after the next presenter, so I will turn it back over to Carol.
Thank you so much, Eleni. That was such a great introduction to this whole issue, and so many resources to share with people who are trying to do outreach and get the word out. It's such an incredible benefit. We want to make sure every parent takes advantage of this. There was one question that came in. I know we're going to ask questions at the end, but while we're here, and this one question is here, one person asked, if I email this to parents, can they look at this tonight? Bobby, I'm not sure if you're talking about the recording of the webinar or the toolkit, but we can definitely get you the toolkit.
Yeah, the toolkit, I'm going to put the link now. It's ready to go. So if you share it, parents will be able.
Great.
So.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Nikki, do you want to tell us about VITA sites?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen right quick. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikki McSellis. I serve as the Chief Impact and Strategy Officer with United Way of the Capital Area here in our Jackson, Mississippi area. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about specifically about our Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, or VITA. So specifically, what is VITA? VITA is an opportunity to have your taxes prepared free of charge. It is an opportunity for you to have them prepared free of charge so that you don't have to pay a tax preparer. You can definitely trust this process and know that it is a product that will make sure that your taxes are filed accurately. It is for families with an annual income of up to $57,000. And again, it helps you get ahead financially, pay down your any debt you may have, and work towards saving for the future. And that's mainly because you don't have to pay the big price tag on having them paid through a tax preparer. So again, it is a trusted tax program. VITA has been in operation for over 50 years. VITA sites offer free tax help to people who need assistance preparing their own taxes, tax returns, including, again, those who make under $57,000, the elderly, persons with disabilities, and those that are limited English speaking taxpayers. We do have translators that also work at our VITA sites if there is a need, if there becomes a need. So the last presenter talked a little bit about what you need to bring to your tax appointment. So this is not an all-inclusive list, but these are some of the top things that you do need to bring with you to your tax appointment. Definitely you'll need a proof of identification if for you and your spouse. You'll need a Social Security card for you, your spouse, and any dependents. If you don't have a Social Security card, you can use an ITIN. You need the birth dates for you, your spouse, and dependents. And again, this is anybody who lived in your household for the entire tax year. You'll also need your wage and earning statements. That includes your W-2s, your W-2Gs, 1099-Rs, and 1099 miscellaneouses. You'll need your interest and dividend statements from your banks, a copy of your last year federal and tax returns. And why is that? That's so our tax preparers can make sure that they're not doing anything wrong or adding anything to your tax return or leaving something off of your tax return that should have been included and was included in a previous year. Also, we'll need proof of a bank account, routing, and account numbers for direct deposit to have your taxes prepared. Of course, it's not required that you have a checking account or a savings account when you file your taxes with VITA, but please note that your taxes, your refunds do go in sooner if you have direct deposit versus not. Also, to file taxes electronically on married filing joint tax returns, both you and your spouse have to be present in order to have those tax forms signed. You'll need any identification, your information from your daycare providers and the daycare provider's tax identification number, such as their Social Security number or that EIN number or employee identification number. Also forms 1095A, B, and C for your health coverage statements. And then you'll need your identity PIN number issued from the IRS. That's if applicable. If you're someone like me who had their identity stolen a couple of years ago, then that you're issued a PIN number, and you'll have to have that PIN number in order to have your taxes filed. Also note that when you come to a VITA site, you will go through an intake process. That intake process, before you even get started, that intake process is going to help to ensure that you have all of the necessary documents before you begin the tax preparation process. That's also for our tax preparers to know if they should assign you to a basic tax preparer or an advanced tax preparer. So our VITA services are free, and they are a trusted source for preparing taxes. All of our VITA volunteers are trained. They have to do a yearly training, as well as pass a yearly tax law training and take a test on a yearly basis. They have 2 times to take the test. If they don't pass the test, then they're not allowed to prepare your taxes. And that's just because on a yearly basis, our tax laws change. We have to make sure that our tax preparers are abreast of these new and ever-changing tax laws. So we ensure that they are trained on a yearly basis and that they are familiar with tax law on a yearly basis. And that's so that they can know how to prepare your taxes, as well as maintain the privacy and confidentiality of all taxpayers. That's a huge part of the training. So you never have to worry about if you're going to share your tax information with a tax preparer, if it's going to remain confidential. In addition to requiring volunteers to certify their knowledge of tax law, the IRS also requires a quality review check for every return prepared at a VITA site prior to filing. So what does that mean? That means that your taxes are going to be prepared by a trained and certified tax preparer. And after your taxes are prepared, they will be reviewed by another trained certified tax preparer. So it goes through through the VITA person, the VITA volunteer that's actually preparing your taxes, and then another VITA volunteer with that same level of certification, be it basic or advanced, will conduct a quality review of your taxes to ensure that they are correct before they are filed electronically. Each filing season, tens of thousands of dedicated VITA volunteers prepare millions of federal and state taxes. Again, our VITA volunteers are trained, they're highly competent and very familiar and competent with child tax credit. So you won't have to worry about if they are preparing your taxes accurately and efficiently. So my United Way, the United Way of the capital area, we currently oversee 5 VITA sites. VITA is a service that's offered statewide. However, United Way of the capital area is the sole grantor of the Internal Revenue Service, this VITA grant. We have held that grant for the last 15 to 20 years. With that grant, we oversee 5 of the state's VITA sites. So those sites are listed here. So if you are in the Jackson Metro area, these sites are currently open and will be open through April 18th. We have, most of our sites are by appointment only, with the exception of the Jackson Medical Mall, where you are able to do walk-in. Several of our sites across the state are also by appointment only. However, you are able to call 211 and have your, find out where the nearest VITA site is to you. Again, VITA sites are across our state and they have specific operating hours. Some are walk-in take walk-ins, and some are by appointment only. But they are open currently and are available to help you with getting your taxes prepared. And that concludes my portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Nikki. That was very helpful. I know, I don't know if some of you are like me, thinking about filing taxes is not a very compelling topic, but it is a very compelling topic if you remember that families need to do this in order to take advantage of this child tax credit. And these resources that have been provided, the Coalition on Human Needs has flyers and all the materials that Alini was describing to help get the word out. Nikki was describing the VITA sites that are free. People there know how to help families file what they need to file to take advantage of this benefit. I also see in the chat, Alini, that you listed several documents, links to documents there that provide additional resources. So I am very hopeful that we're going to get this word out. We were all hoping that, you know, as has been described, more families can take advantage of the child tax credit for 2021 than were previously eligible. And people who thought they didn't qualify should probably do for 2021. And we were hoping that Congress was going to make those changes permanent so those families would be eligible in all the years into the future. But because that didn't happen, that makes it even more urgent that families take advantage of this in 2021, because it's the only year that these additional families are going to qualify for this incredible benefit. So it's really important that we get the word out to as many families as possible, because as was noted by the example, you know, a family could get up to $9,600 if they do this. I mean, that is a significant amount of income for a low-income family. So this would make a big difference. Debbie, did you want to add anything? Was there something you wanted to contribute before we go into see if there are any questions?
Well, first, I want to thank you, Carol, for doing this. For over the years, I know that you passionately want to make sure that every family gets every kind of help that they are entitled to. These are their credits, and we all want them to get it. We are still fighting for a continuation of the credit. We haven't given up on that, and you shouldn't either. But this is the bird in the hand, right? So this is current law says that these are credits that families are owed, and they should just recognize that even if it's a family that did receive monthly payments between last July and last December, that was only half of what they're owed. They have to file their tax form now, as Alini was telling us, in order to get the rest of it, which is still a lot of money. And if they weren't on the list, so the IRS didn't know about them to automatically be sending, they'll get all of the money, not just half. So as Carol, you just pointed out, it could be a lot of money for families. It's really worth doing.
It's definitely worth doing. Thank you for that. Matt, I don't see any questions that have been posted. Again, what I would like to say is that we are going to send the recording out along with the resources that have been provided on the webinar today. So you'll be able to refer back to this, share it with parents or others who were not able to participate today. And again, I want to thank all of our panelists for being with us today, and let's get the word out on the child tax credit.
I just want to point out there are 2 hands raised. Pranada Jackson and Norma Triggs. I don't know if the question was already answered before, but if either of you have questions, you want to pop it in the chat.
Thank you, Debbie. It's great to see you on here. So Norma Triggs and Pranada Jackson, if you have a question, would you put it in the chat so we can answer it for you?
Oh, I see one in the Q&A.
I also just have a question in the Q&A here.
If a parent has already filed their taxes, can they still apply? That's the question. So if they filed their taxes and they didn't claim the CTC for whatever reason, they would have to file an amendment. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Nikki, but are families able to file an amendment at the VITA sites?
Yes, they should be able to file an amendment at the VITA sites.
Okay, great.
Well, that question might have primed the pump for other questions. We can give it just a minute to see if someone else has a question that occurs to them before we say goodbye.
While we're taking a look at that, just to further promote the toolkit, out of all of the links that Alini put in the chat there, the link to the toolkit, you can click on ready-made posters, for instance, one of which at least has a kind of open space that if you wanted to insert, for instance, the contact information for the VITA sites that Nikki's been telling you about, you could do that. So without having to do your own drafting up of anything, there's ready-made graphically nice posters that you can use, posters and flyers. And some of you, if you can insert a message that people can hear while they might be on hold waiting to get through, or something like that. There's sample versions of that. There's lots of ready-made stuff in that toolkit. So if you take a look, those are things you can easily print out and make available to the parents that you're serving.
So there's another question now. The question is, so is this money that they would receive monthly? Not if they file it through their tax return at this point. So they'll receive it as their full tax refund if they do it through their tax return at this point.
There's another question here that says, what is the age limit to file taxes on your child?
17, and they had to be 17 through the last day of 2021. So if they turned 18 on December 30th, unfortunately, they wouldn't count, but if they have to, the oldest they can be through the end of 2021 is 17.
But that also is a year older than the old tax credit used to be. So some parents may not be aware of that and thinking that they're not eligible anymore. I know 16 and 17-year-old kids aren't in childcare, but parents, just make sure they know there's an extra year's worth of child that you can get the credit for.
Well, Eleni has shared, and Nikki too, have shared us their email addresses. We will make those available along with the recording. When we send the recording out, we'll put a link to these resources too. So if questions do occur to you after the webinar and you want to ask them, reach out and contact us and we'll get an answer back to you. All right, well, I want to thank you again for sharing this valuable information so that we're equipped to share it with parents. We'll get the word out. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.